Hi, thanks for joining me for tonight's Robin Hood Diaries. We're going to dive right into a very unusual story this evening. This story I'm about to tell you is a true story I am going to tell in second person, not first person. First person would be too subjective for me, and I'm not ready to deal with those flames quite as yet. This is not just a story that I am going to be telling you. This is a controlled demolition in the halls of false legacy. So think on that one for a minute, because that's what you're about to get. Okay. So this person, this second person I'm going to tell the story about, just do the math. Okay. And then I'll kind of wrap it up with some details and some things to look forward to. I have a friend who has a father, had a father, and here's the story. This friend's father was born in the Midwest in Illinois. This friend's father suffered tragedy at the hands of a situation where his father was killed in a car accident prior to his birth. In that tragedy and the aftermath of that tragedy, this person's mother moved the two of them to Iowa to recover, reconnect, regroup, touch base, and get the support of others, families, friends that were not anywhere near where she wanted to be in Alexis, Illinois. In fact, someone's Aunt Jackie bears a great resemblance to someone else, incidentally, from Alexis, Illinois, a town which was heretofore unknown. On record, it has been mischaracterized, shall we say. So this person's father had a very challenging upbringing. He had, after this relocation, a stepfather who married into the family who was extremely abusive, just to be careful there. He also has now a half-sister at this point from this stepfather. This stepfather was cruel and physically to the point where this person's father had to really set the stepfather straight and basically pin him against a wall and say, look, you're not doing this effing shit to my mother anymore. That changed the dynamics of the relationship. My friend's father then eventually left home. He worshiped his mother, and he went into athletics, namely boxing, wherein he became a 4-time Golden Glove champion boxer after being a prize fighter, boot to neck, driven into the ground, prize fighting for for soldiers in the Second Korean War, in the Korean conflict, as they call it, wherein he actually adopted a little Korean boy, named him Butch, and had him with him for the duration, because the Korean War was it was about 3 years long, and he was, in the middle of that mix. It wasn't no 1-month deployment or anything. So after prize fighting, he is sort of thrown to the wolves of life in the States, back again. He continues his fighting because it's essentially really all he knows at that point. He is also a lifeguard and various and sundry other things. This boxing sort of moves away from itself because this friend's father's mother is terribly, terribly upset that her son is a boxer. It worries her tremendously, and this person's father worshipped his mother, did not want to put her through any more of that, so he sort of pivoted in life, taking him out of Iowa and into the bowels of America at that time. Now we are talking late 40s being graduation time, and early 50s being sort of, war prize fighter transition into, now we're going into the 50s. In this post-boxing period, this person's father did everything. He was an artist in New Orleans. He worked in carnivals. He was a wrestler. He was a boxer. He was a champion. He was a bon vivant. He was an amazing raconteur for such a young gentleman. This father of my friend, to cut to the chase, finally made his way to Los Angeles on the auspices or under them of being an actor, studying to be an actor. But prior to this shift, full-fledged, to Hollywood, Los Angeles, he went to New England, to New York City, to study with the Actors Studio, not as quite officially actually as I did. I was the member of the Actors Studio, and as we all know, studied one-to-one with Lee Strasberg within a group of four or five folks, one-to-one, intensive, etc. So yes, he was involved in theater in New York City. One thing that happens with theater in New York City is you do summer stock. Summer stock sort of like test the waters on different projects. In summer stock, this friend's father met a young lady who was also an actress in one of the shows that he was performing in. In summer stock, they had an affair. She became pregnant. Summer stock ended. She didn't know her condition, he didn't know her condition, and he disappeared off the face of the earth. As far as she's concerned, there was no, show that traveled to Broadway from there. It sort of ended, full stop, and he made his way to Los Angeles to become an actor. And he studied with a couple of, well-known within circles acting teachers, which I actually also studied with years later. This woman went on to have a child. This woman's child was a son born, I believe, by 1958. That would have been 8 years before this friend was born. So this friend's father moves to Los Angeles and pursues whatever it is he thinks is acting. He's a bit of a playboy, let's put it that way. A tough, hardcore player, but a gentle, sweet individual. Good soul, well-intended for the most part. But, so he comes to Los Angeles, and now he has a son he does not know, who is now a toddler, born into a situation that was very complicated, involving shifting parenthood and names changed and lots of mysteries as a result of the friend's father and his encounter with this woman in summer stock. Cut to Los Angeles. This friend's father marries a socialite, and he becomes her husband. And he sort of is drug along through the 60s by a socialite, pretending that he is going to be a famous actor. In 1966, making him about 37, and this woman, the socialite he married, about 37, with the personality of a 60-year-old and the attractiveness of, I don't know, like an Anne Bancroft kind of appeal. Very much so, actually, come to think of it. This friend's mother. So they, midway through the 60s, have my friend. And just as my friend is born, lo and behold, my friend's father has a career. He is in his first film in the mid-60s, a cheesy horror movie with a very famous actor from the Golden Age, young at the time, very cutting-edge actor, who becomes his best friend on the set of this cheesy horror movie. They go on to great relations within the industry and outside of the industry, impactful, notorious. So my friend's father and his mother survived the 60s, and the outcome, of course, is divorce, long overdue, involving his shenanigans with this actor that he had met in this cheesy horror movie. So my friend's father then flies off to Europe. My friend was under the impression that he had been sort of torn from his family and driven off to Europe in anguish, in desperate pursuit of a life as an actor. No, not really. Come to find out, my friend's father sort of just kind of decided to end the marriage amicably or not so, take off to Europe to make spaghetti westerns and find himself, leaving the very, very troubled, complicated, and neurotic mother of my friend to basically deal with the aftermath of the divorce. And she is still expected to gather publicity, photographs, and type resumes and press releases for my friend's father in Europe during this divorce, separation. Quite a taskmaster for such a innocent, gentle soul, so anguished and torn from his family. So my friend's father returns to the States, and my friend is now stuck with this neurotic hellion of a socialite and an actual, in reality, absentee father, not a make-believe one. But he is not prevented from seeing his father by the socialite. In fact, au contraire, he is allowed to see him, much to the chagrin of his socialite mother, because she bitches and moans incessantly, but she does not interrupt the relationship. Therefore, my friend and his father have a 50% relationship in poverty, because my friend's father essentially had to hide the fact that he was impoverished in order to really be able to have his son in his life. So then my friend and his father are living sort of a double life where his father is terribly poor, but they both have to sort of keep up appearances so that they continue to see each other. Now, there's lots of stuff that I need to gloss over, plenty, because it is very, 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 very intense information that I am not about to share here. So let's just say that from this moment of divorce and this putting together of my friend and his father in this way, they lived through a period of time until my friend's father met a woman. This was a very, very inappropriate, volatile, and very disturbing period prior to meeting this woman. We will leave that alone for another time, another story that will be forthcoming, unfortunately, for everybody. So he meets this woman in the mid-70s, lovely woman, very, very not like him or what he's used to, the gals that he was frequenting. And he meets this woman, long story short, she is who she is, he is who he is. He learns that, he has a second chance at a family and they have a daughter. So this daughter comes into the scene with a stepbrother in tow, which would be my friend's stepbrother, her half-brother. And they start a life together. My friend's father, this woman, the new sister, and the stepbrother. And they move along. In fact, my friend's father meets this woman because my friend was actually a very, very busy young professional, and this woman happened to be staff on this job that my friend was doing as a youngster. But staff, crew, got friendly with my friend's father, and the rest is history. So now we have my friend's father, my friend, 50% time with this new family, a stepbrother in tow, a half-sister in tow, and a new stepmom. So again, cut to more chases. My friend is helping raise this baby, changing its diapers, watching its milestones, babysitting ad nauseum from here globally, which is a whole nother story. And then this sister, half-sister of my friend, lands an opportunity. She is, of course, forced into the same profession as my father, not forced, but placed and tickled, let's put it that way, into the same industry. So now we have new sister becoming a star because she is discovered in a herd of cattle. Well warranted. My friend's, sister's quite a individual, a standout personality. So from this point on, my friend's sister, from the moment that she becomes extremely popular, a bit of a darling to the country in many, many ways, my friend notices that he is just completely ghosted in the press for no reason, apparent reason. And let's just leave it at that, ghosted in the press, okay? I don't want to get into details of what pained my friend through these years that he has now recently come to realize shifted seismically the whole interpretation of what had happened with this family, with his family. So this ghosting, this public ghosting goes on for years, and my friend is absolutely puzzled, but so endeared to her and the family and this romantic notion of this second family that's so blended and so happy. He plays along, he just sort of plays along until he in his own right becomes somewhat famous, my friend, and then is further confused because then he has some modicum of fame and there's still this invisibility factor, this ghosting. So then let's move along a little bit further. My friend is now older. He is at least of age. His sister is continuing to be, famous in her own right for as long as it lasts in that arena. And then my friend comes up some horrendous life challenges, life experiences you would never want, ever in a million years. You would not wish these life experiences on your worst enemy. But my friend endures them. And in the midst of this enduring of these horrors, which were a benchmark of that era, of that decade, impacting and wiping out 2 generations of creative folks, let's put it that way, in this family's arena, of all things, ironically. These generations were being torn out of this creative arena that this family supposedly depended on to put food on the table. Except my friend was in the trenches of this scenario, this crisis, and did not handle certain things well with his stepmother, and by proxy his sister, and apparently a stepbrother that was clueless as to anything that was going on. So then there is a falling out regarding my friend, his sister, the stepmother, and the youngster, the youngin, that was caught up in the mix of death and decimation of this era. This incident, which resulted in someone's demise, sort of really kind of threw my poor 20-year-old friend's brain for a loop. And he got very upset, and his stepmother got very upset, details of which are way too intricate to get into at the moment, and the rift occurred. Since that time, for decades, my friend was under the impression that this rift caused this long-term, long-standing kind of ghosting, kind of photoshopping of himself out of the picture of this family. This supposed family. Depends on your interpretation, your definition. So, my friend makes his way through 2 of these scenarios with 2 partners of my friends that suffer the same fate concurrently, consecutively, leaving my friend in the dark in life with lessons learned that never should have been learned by 21. So my friend goes all these years thinking that this rift, this permanent seismic rift within his family, was caused by the tumult and the hysteria of those moments, which his father, unknowing to most, helped him through. My friend was helped through these 2 tragedies by his father, who by that point was being seen, I guess, as an absentee father because he couldn't divide himself 50-50 adequately. But he sure helped my friend through a hell of a lot of shit. So then my friend is going through decades of believing that this unfortunate, tragic horror that occurred, aforementioned, was the cause of this rift. And he fought tooth and nail, in good ways and in bad ways, to assemble at least some logic as to why this has become irreparable. And he anguished for decades over, why is this so irreparable? And he basically used the servant's entrance for decades with this issue, trying to walk delicately, then crunching a few shells, not understanding things, then walking delicately for another decade or two. So now we have my friend coasting through life with his own family, son, husband, partner, spouse, whatever you want to imagine. And suddenly he gets a message. And he gets this message on Instagram, which he hardly ever checks. And this message comes from a beautiful young gentleman who expresses his concerns that he has been reaching out to both myself, meaning my friend, telling it in the first person to me as he received this message. And he says, I myself read this, and my takeaway was first shock, he says, and then he says that there parts of the message seem to infer that this person had been reaching out for years, and that this person's father, who was allegedly the son, the missing link from Summerstock in New York City, remember, from the late 50s? This person who reached out to my friend is the grandson of my friend's father. This person, this lovely young man, is now, lo and behold, the nephew, his nephew, of a brother that he never knew, because the brother spent his virtual entire life trying to track down my friend's father and my friend and anyone else with that name that he could get a hold of. He spent decades doing this. He was fruitless in his endeavors. The torch was passed to his son, this lovely, lovely nephew, newfound, of my friend. This torch was passed, again, years went by. Apparently, my friend was told by his newfound nephew that outreach had been made to a certain sibling of his, and that it was fruitless, that it really went nowhere. It was bumped out, unresponded. I don't quite know what my friend said, but my friend said that his nephew said it was unsuccessful, let's say. But it was successful with my friend because suddenly he had a new nephew, and he found out about a brother that had he had when he was 6, he wouldn't have had bad things happen to him, because that brother would have been there to stop it. That brother would have been there to kick my friend in the ass when he was tearing up the town, almost putting himself in jail. My friend's dead brother, now deceased brother, would have been them through marriage, through birth, through death, through all those things. And he was not, because he was unsuccessful in his attempts to reach his brother and his sister. So this friend's nephew is now in his life in a beautiful, magical, beyond a magical way. The expectation that my friend has is that joy will be equally as felt by his half-sister, being that this is the long-lost nephew of the long-lost brother that has spent his life trying to find them. But strangely enough, when my friend reaches out to this sibling and says, lo and behold, imagine the family surprise that has befallen us, his sibling asks if it is this nephew by full name. Now, why would my friend's sibling know and identify this nephew by full name in an outro with questions about how this all occurred? How would that sibling know a full name if there had not been some form of contact made in some way, shape, form, and handled in whatever way? So my friend was terribly surprised at that. So bringing us now current, my friend has this beautiful nephew who is in his life. My friend also has a sibling that is continuing to, in effect, very politely, a little bit more, perhaps frequently than he is used to, touch base, do favors for him, like cut him, throw him a bone, that his father had some residual checks he was entitled to, but she had to sign off for him and all of this silliness. All of this added up for my friend. And he realized that this ghosting had nothing to do with his partner, that this was a long-standing mystery from early on that is now profoundly making no sense. And now we have this nephew in the picture, and we have my friend not understanding why there is no family interest in he and his nephew and this brother, now deceased, that spent a lifetime looking for them. So my friend has decided that he has been entering the servants' entrance for way too long. And my friend is getting way too old and way too fed up to deal with this shit anymore. So my friend's going to write a book, and it's going to detail this saga, this opus, this requiem mass, soup to nuts. So y'all going to get some really nice info in between, because it was all going to fill up the second book. Second book is already written, basically, in my friend's head, because it's an easy peasy write. Because these post-its have been stacking up, very neatly and nicely in little compartments all through his brain, ready to be pulled and stuck. And that's what's going to happen. So again, I'm not just telling a story here. I am about to set off controlled demolitions in the halls of false legacy. I don't need to do the math on all of this for you. You do your own math, you draw your own conclusions. None of my directness, firmness is at all intended to upset anyone, trigger anyone, off-put anyone. Again, this show's for the archives, guys. This is not necessarily for you or me or people in question. It is not even a shot over the bow. It is a file entered into a cabinet, locked until further notice. Until further notice being the operative words. So I hope my little story has perhaps entertained you, intrigued you, hopefully not upset you, pricked up your ears, and piqued up your interest. So there you go. That's the second-hand sort of story, fairy tale that you were entitled to this evening, considering I threw out a couple of very mysterious, cryptic previews of this Robin Hood diary, which shall live in infamy. So there you go, kids. Love you. I don't know how to do a teaser on this one, but I'll try. We've got a couple of nice things lined up for next weekend and next week that don't involve me blabbing away. This show is twice as long as it should be. I'm going to let you go with all the love in my heart, from my soul. I do mean it. Families are chosen. And guess what? Sometimes we end up with a real clinker. Choose wisely. Okay? Love y'all. Bye.